I was doing some research and took a look at Russia and where Russia is on the map. Then I saw a 1771 map showing the land that we know as Tartaria, or Tartary. Well, then I saw that Tartaria's flag had a dragon on it, and I thought that was interesting. And then I went to check Russia's flag, and theirs had a horse. Wait, the horse is standing on? What is that? Don't tell me that is a dragon. Let's start off with the Cincinnati Music Hall. And who built this thing in 1878? Samuel Hannaford and Sons? Haven't we heard of this crazy group before? Yeah, we have. Episode 23. So we already know there's something weird going on with this building and this Samuel group. And we don't have to get too far into that in this episode, but let's do a quick recap on these guys. They are led by a 23-year-old master builder that designs and builds the most incredible architecture in the whole world in the 1800s in Ohio. And he is never mentioned in any news articles until years after the buildings are completed, which is totally normal and acceptable. Oh, it isn't? No, it isn't. Samuel Hannaford and Sons Construction Company did not have any known records until 1896, when a newspaper finally mentioned them. But they were supposedly off building tons of buildings before then. Okay, we're all caught up, and let's attack this narrative even further. The Music Hall in Cincinnati, Ohio. The construction of the Cincinnati Music Hall took approximately 2 years. The building process began in 1876 and was completed in 1878. Simple construction in the 1800s, of course. Oh, right, I forgot. Massive construction projects were just thrown together in 24 months in the 1800s. What are we reading here? 24 months? In a time where horse-drawn carriages, wagons, and carts were commonly used for local transportation, both for personal travel and the transport of goods. Who believes this type of civilization was capable of constructing something like this in a time frame that we would struggle with today? I think they would have built this faster than our current civilization if this story is true. Could you imagine? All right, honey, I'm leaving for work in my horse and wagon. I'll be back at 5. I'm off to build this 158-foot-high music hall that includes an iconic bell tower and spire. Me and a couple sons will get this thing done, no problem, in under 24 months. Hope there isn't any traffic on my way there. What a joke. The Cincinnati Music Hall has a total seating capacity of around 3,516. Are you on the fence? If it's still an old world building? Should I continue and help you over the fence? The music hall was completed in 1878, supposedly. What do you think happened 2 years later? Take a guess. The fire resulted in significant damage to the interior of the building, including the destruction of the original auditorium. However, the exterior structure largely survived, and the music hall was subsequently restored and rebuilt. Okay, so we have another fire burned down the building story. And remember, this is always the clear giveaway. The fire story is so repetitive, but it is key to our research. It gives the whole thing away, and this building is from the old world. Time and time again, they supposedly construct these incredible buildings. And in a few short months later, the building is said to have had so much fire damage that it needed a complete renovation. Over and over they say this, all over the world. And of course, there was not a fire. There was not a huge master renovation. This is the building right here. This is the original building. So built in 1878, supposedly. Fire in the music hall in 1880, supposedly. And the rest of the old world town got burnt down 4 years later. The Burn District fire destroyed pretty much the entire downtown area. Just unbelievable. So not only did the city hall burn down, but the entire downtown area also in 4 years? After all these strange occurrences with the Samuel Hannafords and Sons Company, I couldn't be more certain that they were a front for these buildings. It is right in our faces. All of the key giveaways are there that show these buildings are built by a previous civilization. And they should be taken care of and looked at with open eyes the next time you see one. They are incredible structures that stand the test of time, unlike anything that we would build today. They were not built in the 1800s, in my opinion. They were built by a much more advanced civilization. Should we note another fire? A much more recent fire? The fire at the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris on April 15th, 2019. It is believed to have started accidentally. The initial investigation indicated that the fire originated in the attic space of the cathedral. It was speculated that the fire was sparked by an electrical short circuit that occurred within the ancient wooden framework of the roof. Whoops, accidentally burnt down another old world incredible structure. It's just sad, to be honest. Whoever was in charge of burning our buildings down in the 1800s seems to still enjoy lighting them up. Should we enter Australia? Let's do it. The Royal Exhibition Building. The construction of this building supposedly started in 1879. I wonder how long this took to build. Any guesses? Well, the right answer is 1 year. Construction started in 1879 and finished right up in only 1 year, which is totally logical, and we all believe that. Oh, we don't? And a fire, of course, because we have to make sure that that goes into the narrative. Can I ask, is this like a rule that they have to put a fire narrative into the story? There's no way that every single one of these buildings that are built in a year have some sort of fire. Not every single house on the block has a fire that burns down the whole thing. The chances that they all start on fire are none. There is no chance. At the time of its completion in 1880, this was one of the largest buildings in the world, and built in just 1 year? Oh, and remember, just to drive this home, this was for the Melbourne International Exhibition. So not only did they throw this thing up in 1 year, they also built many other buildings at the exact same time. So simple in 1879. Some still stand today. The Victorian Supreme Court, the Carlton Gardens, the Melbourne Museum. I hope this helps clear things up for everyone. This type of construction is not an easy task today, let alone in 1879. There are so many questions to still be answered, but this is just getting so obvious that nobody in the 1800s built these buildings, and especially in only 1 year. It isn't logical thinking to really believe that. One construction company can throw up all of these buildings in 1 year? Or which construction company? Or which construction companies? Who believes this? Believing that narrative, after seeing the countless fire stories from Ohio to Chicago to Australia and over to Europe and everywhere else in the world, believing that narrative is just indoctrination to the core. We all are allowed to think for ourselves. Just imagine this being built by a community that had horses and wagons as their main source of transportation in just 1 year. It isn't logical thinking. In my opinion, we are being lied to, and it's time to realize it. Do you fully trust the mainstream narrative? Are you on the fence? Well, if this is the first time finding this channel or hearing anything about the previous civilization, get ready to have your mind blown. We are given the St. Anne Shrine, located in Fall River, Massachusetts. We are given the mainstream history, where we are told the church was designed by Canadian architect Napoleon Barassa in the Romanesque revival style, with construction beginning in 1891. Well, I have located a postcard from over 120 years ago of this building, and there is a major flaw on the back of this postcard that I don't think that anyone was ever meant to see, and we're about to see it right now. St. Anne's Church and Shrine, Fall River, Massachusetts, founded in 1869, which is 22 years before they tell us that construction was just starting on this project in 1891. Not only do they give us this date of 1869, they also say that it was founded. We have proven in episode 35 that the legal definition of the word founded is not constructed or built. You do not find your home, you build your home. It is constructed. In 1869, they found this building, and they are attempting to lie to us in the narrative time and time again. This time we can see the lie right on the table for everybody to see. What a horrible mistake by the narrator. It is 100% undeniable proof that the story is lying to us, with a total mix-up, having this 1869 founded date on the back of a postcard that they thought nobody would ever see. This building was not built by people riding around on horses and wagons. This building was found. It was built by the previous civilization that had incredible knowledge and architecture skills and understood how to construct buildings that last forever. So now that we know that this building was founded and the narrative is a complete lie. Let's take a look into this architect character, Mr. Napoleon Bourassa. And when we take a look at his biography, the character never actually leaves Canada, besides a little vacation to Europe. If he is truly constructing this palace in Massachusetts, this would have been mentioned, considering it's more impressive than anything we have ever constructed today. But the fact that they act like this is pathetic and not even worth mentioning, especially in a time period where presidents were being born in sheds. This should be alarming to anyone. They say his office is in Quebec, Canada, born in Montreal, Canada, visited Europe, founded the Canadian Journal, doing more in Montreal, Canada, in 1880 finding the National Gallery of Canada. Him and his fellow artists are doing more in Quebec, Canada, then dies in Canada. Where is the part that he throws his cowboy hat on, saddles up, heads down to Massachusetts on his horse and wagon, and works for the shipping company Donkeys Incorporated, and knocks out a massive palace? It's not in the narrative, because Napoleon Dynamite didn't do this. It was already found in 1869, exactly like we have shown. The narrative is fully lying to us, and we have fully documented this throughout the first 50 episodes. Now, we have talked about the Samuel Hannaford and Sons in episode 24, I believe, and I thought I would let you all know that they also decided to knock this building out, the Greene County Courthouse in Ohio. And don't forget that they were just incredible. Their chisels just moved a little faster than the rest of ours. Beginning this project in 1901 and completing it in less than 12 months. The winters, of course, weren't an issue. They never were in the 1800s. Honestly, I would love to see someone in 2023 or 2024 try and recreate this project in less than a year. It wouldn't even be close, and we all know this now. So we might ask, in 1901 to 1902, we were able to get these projects done so fast all over the world. It was so easy. What happened? Where did this technology go? Why do we not still do this today? The answer is clear at this point. These stories aren't true. These buildings were not built in 1 year. They were found and repurposed. They used the same architect characters for multiple buildings to attempt to explain them away. We lost this technology within the last 122 years to construct massive structures in a year? No. Our timeline never had this technology, and we are being lied to. Just adding in primary features of 4,500-pound clocks that are inside of a clock tower that reaches 145 feet into the sky. With perfection, of course. Oh, and the 4,500-pound clock inside of the frame that weighs an additional 3,000 pounds, and of course every hour, still ringing today. This alone would have taken us 5 years to get done. Considering it takes us like a year to get a sidewalk done, and our sidewalks fall apart in like 5 years. This building, on the other hand, with a clock tower and all, will be there forever, as long as nobody touches it. In September of 2022, we have an article in the Dayton Daily News, where apparently the building needs our help. We all know that restoration really means destruction at this point. In my opinion, something happened within the last year or so, where a lot of these buildings are being destroyed or restored. And we have a lot of episodes where we have gone to these places and documented that. The Greene County Courthouse will be getting a facelift. Oh, incredible. This fall, as the county seeks to repair and restore and destroy the exterior of the historic building. A $322,000 project to destroy the outside of the old building, which is obviously one of Greene County's most recognizable landmarks. And this next sentence is going to show how old this building really is. The courthouse currently has some limestone that is spalling and in need of repairs. The definition of the word spalling is break off in fragments. Now, how long does it take for stone to break down? You could say that stones decompose over many thousands and even millions of years. Do we all believe that this limestone is spalling in just 100 years? Or is this building much older than we are told? I'd like you to comment below with your opinion. But you all know which way I'm leaning. Incredible stuff. Oh, and of course, they've wanted to do this for a very long time. I mean, how much clearer could this get? This building was not built in less than a year in 1901 to 1902. They've wanted to fix the spalling stone for a long time. And I have to be honest, I don't even know if they realize what they're saying at this point, but they're actually admitting that it's way older than 1901, whether they realize it or not. And of course, additional destructions will be made to the courthouse that they just aren't going to let us know about. Now, this is all back in 2022, so I'm guessing it'll all be done by now, considering it supposedly only took them less than a year to complete the entire building in 1901 to 1902. And we're evolving and advancing, right? Now, while researching this, I thought Greene County only had one courthouse, which they do, but all of a sudden, I was sitting there with two Greene County courthouses, but they're both in a county called Greene. What is with the AI repeating itself over and over? Duplicates all the time. Is this how all the names were created? For all the towns, all the cities, all the characters that they give us? It's all so strange. So we have the Greene County Courthouse that we just talked about over in Ohio, but we have another Greene County in Illinois with another courthouse that was supposedly constructed in less than a year. So both built in less than a year. And this one is even older than the last one that we just talked about. Built in a year from 1891 to 1892. And we all know that this is logistically impossible at this point. We have gone over this for anyone that is new here, or for anyone that wants to revisit this. I think episode 41 is awesome at going over this. There are so many key factors that come into play when designing, preparing, constructing, and executing a building to perfection. You have to have everything go perfect. And even then, knocking it out in a year, over 130 years ago, is insane. It's almost turning into a test to see who gets the joke at this point. Both named the same thing, and both built in less than a year. In an interview from 2014, the Greene County clerk and recorder says in an article titled Greene County Courthouse stands the test of time. Exactly what we've been saying here on this channel. And of course, exactly how our construction that we only take 10 months on lasts forever. It stands the test of time. Oh, it doesn't? No, it doesn't. So she says, we have done some rewiring and other things like that, but that's about the only thing wrong with the place. Knocking it out in a year. Good forever. Very standard work for the 1890s, because they just worked harder than us, of course. Just more dedicated. Less distractions and less code restrictions. Yeah, sorry, but that doesn't cut it anymore. The 3-story limestone Romanesque revival style building will be there forever, as long as they leave it alone. So in the article, they start saying that there were multiple courthouses here before this one. Because why not? And we all know at this point that this is the first courthouse. It's the only one that's ever been here. But I wanted to see what they had to say about all of these other courthouses. So the county was created in 1821. What do you know? They knock a courthouse out in 1821 to 1822. Now, we have talked a lot about recurring names, and this is not the first time we've seen this. I brought it up before, and I'm going to bring it up again. Episode 43, for anyone new here, is the best example of this. The AI is generating these names and these stories, in my opinion. And here, we have another example of this. The courthouse was a long frame structure and was built by William Finley and another Finley, Thomas. So those names would be fine if we didn't have hundreds of examples of this. We would just say that they are brothers. The problem is that we know what is going on here. It isn't brothers. And I will prove this because in the exact same paragraph, we have Thomas Finley and Thomas Ratton. Multiple Thomases and multiple Finleys. The odds are 0%. There is no chance that this is remotely possible, especially with all of the hours and hours of documented evidence that we have provided. This has happened so many times. This is becoming clearer and clearer by the week. It's in every single city, every single town, all over the world. It's the exact same thing. In the comments section, you guys are all saying the exact same thing in your towns, where you find a fire story, and you find the same thing with reoccurring themes and names. It's the same thing all over the world. These are AI-generated names, in my opinion, where they throw a bunch of names into this system and it twists them a little bit, making each story basically the same thing, but just dedicated to that one specific spot. It's undeniable at this point. And then you have the classic half windows at the current ground level, where there is clearly more to this building. under the ground, and most likely a tunnel system connecting it to surrounding buildings. Are any of us shocked that Tesla supposedly worked in Budapest, a city that is well documented here on this channel, that is my clear-cut #1 city in the world when it comes to this research? What was he told in Budapest as the head of Budapest Telephone Exchange? What did he learn there and then bring over here to the USA to kickstart all of the old world technology in this current timeline? The whole thing is very interesting. I have founded this photo of the Summer Street fire, and honestly, these are brick buildings. Fires don't look like bombs went off. This is not the result of a fire, in my opinion. It looks like the city was carpet bombed. It's just completely wiped out. It's a total mess. Fires don't do this kind of damage. I mean, it looks like the whole area is in the middle of a garbage site at this point. There's just dirt everywhere. There's nothing left. And remember, there was a great fire in nearly every major city. Check it out. I guarantee there was one in a city near you. So, were these really fires? Or were they being bombed to wipe these buildings out that were everywhere? Buildings that we have shown that hold dates on them. Buildings that 100% do not fit in our timeline. It's incredible stuff. I mean, look at these photos. This is the result of a fire? No. In my opinion, there is no way. House fires do not melt stone and brick. It has to be close to 1,500 degrees to 2,000 degrees to melt stone. And house fires simply don't get that hot. Look at the destruction. The ground is really messed up. I mean, what building was in this location that they did not want us to see? Just knowing what we know, seems like it was probably a good one. And just a few more photos here showing the destruction of these fires that started by a cow tipping over a lantern. But at least they switched it up. From horses and cowboys to the stone and marble shipping company, Donkeys Incorporated, to a cow, just rubbing it right in our faces for decades. Until now. 17 East Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois. We have the Palmer House Hotel, where we are told that there have been multiple Palmer House hotels on this exact same site. When the first Palmer House was built as a wedding present in September of 1870, because we all know that building a massive hotel in downtown Chicago and giving it away as a wedding present in the 1800s was very normal. This was a common gesture back then, and you're gonna wanna stay around to the end when we tie this entire thing together and find something awesome that connects with this city and everything that we found. So this hotel present opens up in 1870 with no issues, of course. All of the horses pulled the stone to the site perfectly, and they all did their part. And the very next year, it of course burns down in the Great Chicago Bomb. Oh, did I say bomb? Well, they tell us that it was a fire, but I don't believe that these great fires were actually fires. This looks to me like these so-called great fires in every single city in the world, basically. You can go ahead and look it up. It happened in a city near you. These were actually bombs, in my opinion. The destruction was something that a fire alone could never accomplish, especially when we are given the fire story from the National Geographic Society that the Chicago fire bomb started by accidentally knocking over a lantern when running away from a card game. Let's take a look at the destruction again, where they tell us that this is the ruins of the first Palmer House. And for one, are we 100% sure that this photo is showing us the destruction of the first Palmer House? And for two, is this even Chicago? Could this be a random street in Germany right after they bombed it? And for three, take a look at those buildings in the background. This is from a tipped over lantern? Or is it more possible that we are being lied to? The buildings are just ripped apart. They're shredded and smashed. And we know you can't burn down stone and brick buildings from a simple house fire. They don't get anywhere near hot enough. This is exactly why you put stone around the fire pit. You make stone and brick fireplaces inside your house, right inside your living room, and nobody panics. It doesn't spread into your kitchen or into your neighbor's house. It doesn't crumble and look like it exploded. Are you seeing the lie very clearly now? Now let's go deeper. Now they tell us that this photo is the second Palmer house that was constructed on the same site as the first one. And before we go on, they tell us that this was completed just 4 years after the Chicago firebomb by Donkeys Incorporated with the help from their horse and wagon community. They just cleaned up that old one that was exploded all over the place. They moved all the broken stone and cleared off a solid, nice, and level spot for a brand new foundation. In just 4 years, no problem. They built this after the fire. Take a look at these horses and wagons, right next to the completed palace. Built in less than 4 years? And honestly, it looks like it's been there for a long time. We had these wood planks set up that they would use to go from the paved sidewalk from the old world to these dirt roads. If this horse and wagon community built these sidewalks, they would have just built a ramp leading to the dirt with the same sidewalk material. But they didn't. They went and got a wood plank because that was what they were capable of in that time period. They were capable of a wood plank as their ramp to walk from the sidewalk to the dirt road. They found these buildings and they were occupying the old world civilization's work. And we're still doing this today, all over the world. In 1870, the first Palmer house was completed. In 1871, a year later, a tipped over lantern and tons of bombs go off and destroy the whole city. 1871. How long do you think it would take those horse and wagons, realistically, without massive equipment? How long would it take them to clean this up? Not 8 months, I can guarantee you that. It would have taken them years. So now knowing this information, here we go. We are told that they cleaned up this entire site. They planned out a new one with perfection. They made sure they had the right construction team picked out. They planned out the materials. They had enough horses and wagons to pull the stone and marble. Everything else they needed to do, permits and everything. And get this second building done in 1875. Completed in 1875. From the point of the fire to the completion date, only taking 4 years. With Chicago winters being brutal, we know that this is logistically impossible, and they give us this nice photo of it. When today, we don't build any 7-story palaces in less than 4 years. And that's not including the entire cleanup project from the fire bombs going off in 1871 all over downtown Chicago. Oh, did I forget to mention that this AI-generated story just couldn't help itself but throw another fire into this paragraph, saying that this was the world's only fireproof hotel and built with perfection and with rapid speeds in the 1800s. And get this, 1920 hits. So this building is supposedly only 45 years old at this point. We have supposedly the world's first and only fireproof building. And please just look at this thing again. We can see for ourselves. Does this look like a building that's going to go out of date in 45 years? No, of course it doesn't. Well, they demolished it and make the third Palmer house on the exact same site. Unbelievable. This time, it only took them 2 years to get done. They tell us that this is the first one and that this is the second one. And now with everything that we know that the narrative is ridiculous and a total lie at this point. So let's ask a massive question here. Do you think it's possible that these photos of these two buildings were just photos of other buildings around Chicago or even in different cities that they just knocked down and threw them into this story? It seems like it to me. They had a lot of buildings to get rid of to start this reset. And this seems like the most logical explanation in my opinion. Use one building to explain away all of these other old world buildings that are no longer here. And this third Palmer House hotel is just built on top of an old world structure. You can see the difference between the old world construction on the bottom and our bland brick style where it almost looks like they threw a layer of brick over the top of the old world's work. There were a lot of buildings in Shalaga that needed to be destroyed. So this Palmer House hotel all happened because of this Potter Palmer guy, supposedly. And this guy is pinned as the guy that developed Lakeshore Drive and worked with another character that got a lot of old world buildings pinned to his name, as we have shown, Marshall Field. where this guy got the Field Museum, where they also got to share the department store chain, the Marshall Field Company, along with this other guy, Levi Leiter, which we can look into in another episode. I'm sure he's got the exact same kind of stuff going on. My point for coming back to this Potter Palmer was because he got to live in this castle mansion. And it's an obvious old world castle that was once located on North Lakeshore Drive, Chicago. Did you know Chicago had castles? And this one was supposedly constructed in just 3 years, from 1882 to 1885, by the Cobb and Frost firm, which we have gone over. We know that they are characters as well. The castle in Chicago, destroyed in 1950. The thing was only 65 years old. I'm gonna ask you guys, do castles go out of date in 65 years? The last time I checked, they don't. I mean, even the houses that we build today with their vinyl siding that fall off once a year when the wind blows. These houses don't even go out of date in just 65 years. Yet, a massive castle thrown together in 3 years in the 1800s that looks like it's straight out of a Disney movie. That one goes out of style in just 65 years. They must have looked at it with disgust in that time period. Their standards were just so high while riding around on their donkeys, located in Chicago, Illinois. While they're also over there, just a couple blocks down, gifting old world hotels, all pinned to this Potter Palmer guy. It's amazing. What a time to be alive in the 1800s. You get free hotels and castles everywhere. You know what? I was thinking about it. Let's just go see what this Levi Leiter guy was all about. He also got to live in an old world mansion. They tell us that this one was constructed in 1891. That's the only construction details that they give us on this mansion, where we have seen in previous episodes that they know all about the year -300, over 2,300 years ago. They give us these ridiculous stories about construction, but in 1891, there's nothing. The 55-room marble stairway with a great hall mansion was, of course, taken over by the US government and then demolished just 56 years after it was built because there was nothing to see there. No. And this whole project, we are told, started in 1891, where the old world building that had white marble ceilings, an elaborate fireplace, carved woodwork, because this was very normal stuff in the 1800s. Anybody could have done that. They don't even care to mention who that would have been. They knocked out that hand-carved woodwork that they only needed for 56 years. They start the project in 1891, where he buys the land on June 12th. We are being told that they still haven't started the construction because they finally get the permit. We already know this thing is done in 1893, so they better get going on it. We only got 18 months to work with now. So they get this Theo guy picked out, where they give us a list of other buildings to investigate, because this St. Thomas Church is also destroyed. So we get stained glass windows, a marble stairway, hand-carved woodwork, marble ceilings with zero information as to where all of this material even came from. We are told, and we are supposed to believe, that this 55-room masterpiece is done in less than 18 months. When they tell us it was done at some point in 1893, where they decide that it's just not cutting it anymore, and they all agree to knock it down just 56 years later. In a realistic world where everybody is thinking logically, this is a story for a baby. We don't build places today in 18 months and then knock them down in just 56 years. And they didn't do that in the 1800s either. This building was here much longer than we are being told. And this very wealthy individual was clearly a part of a group that allowed him to occupy this old world mansion. And then this is where they give us a clue for us to dig deeper. The clue is Theo Chandler, where they tell us that he designed this castle that got destroyed after just 56 years of use. Well, he also had a few other things attached to his name that should open a few eyes. First of all, he is off supposedly designing a brand new castle in Newcastle County, and they name it the Courthouse. A new castle located in a county called Newcastle in the USA, where it only got to stand for 40 years. At this point, alarms should be going off. A very clear pattern with these specific characters, where they are pinned to these old world buildings that hold narratives of incredible construction projects that are being destroyed after such a short amount of time. If we are advancing and times are easier now, we are better at construction now versus the 1800s. Why would they be knocking these type of structures down after just 40 years when we are clearly more advanced than the 1800s in nearly every single aspect, including training processes? We have established construction teams. We have incredible equipment, tools, and resources. And we would never do this. We would never knock this building down after just 40 years. Our towns build the ugliest buildings with basic materials and basic boring 90-degree angles. They look like boxes. Yet when the 1800s supposedly built a courthouse, it's a masterpiece that they could afford to and all agree to knock down. It's completely backwards and it isn't logical. Something much deeper is going on. And we know here that these are destruction projects to remove buildings that were previously here, built by a much more advanced civilization, and not built by Theo, while he's over there directing the project from inside his wagon carriage behind his horse on the dirt road. So let's take a look at what's really being said here. The building stood for just 40 years, which we know here that is not true. It was here much longer than that, and I need to make that clear. But they say that this was the best known building in the city, adding to the point that nobody would ever knock this thing down. The best known building in the city? After just 40 years? That's the time to blow it up? And this part of the paragraph is very interesting in my opinion, where they say, even if very few people now know what used to stand there, and this goes for the whole world, we really don't know what was knocked down before we were born. How long have they been knocking down buildings? 200 years? 300 years? We know, and we have documented many times, that they are still destroying these buildings today. But in the 1800s, there was no way to communicate this to thousands and millions of people, to let everybody know that this is happening in their town, and so that everyone could share that it was also happening in their town at the exact same time. They didn't have internet. I believe this was all taken away before 1776 and slowly given back to us. From that point on, the only news that anyone had that was being shared with the population was all controlled. And it seems like our ancestors from the 1800s were all just under their spell, and nobody could see what was going on around them and what the controllers were doing. And it also seems like up until just a few years ago, this was still going on, just destroying a lot of the old world's work, with nobody really realizing it. So here we have a destruction photo from 1919, where we are told and are being made to believe that only 39 years after its construction, the basically brand new, incredible stone structure was out of date and needed to be torn down. We know that this thing was much older, and as we've said, nobody is knocking this thing down after just 39 years. We are also told that the writer of this article thinks that many people who watched it get knocked down also watched it get built, which is simply not the case. And this is a demolition, a planned demolition. It was torn down. There was no fire. Take a look at the structure. And now let's look at the Palmer house from earlier. They look exactly the same. They both look like they've been destroyed on purpose, proving my point that no fire took down these buildings. Either it was a planned bomb in all of these cities with the Great Fire bombs, or they were just going door to door using high velocity explosives. And this brings up something that I've been thinking a lot about. We have all of these stories about these buildings that were knocked down, but it does make you think about how many buildings were destroyed before 1800 that we don't have any narratives or photos of, and they were just wiped out. Buildings that weren't classified as courthouses, but just regular stores, to create a new timeline and new narratives, just based on these incredible mansions, hotels, castles, and courthouses in the USA that were demolished. It makes you really think and wonder if Budapest, the way that every single building basically looks like it's straight out of the old world, it makes you think, did nearly every single city in the world at one point before their Great Fire date look exactly like Budapest? And the buildings that made it through the main destruction on that Great Fire date, these were the structures that needed to be explained away in a false narrative and fit into our timeline for a 39-year gap and tossed out before anyone really noticed it. We have the Symphony Center, a music complex located at 220 South Michigan Avenue. A building that is here for everyone to see in Chicago, Illinois. A building that holds a 2,522-seat orchestra hall, a rehearsal hall and performance space, a ballroom, an event space that overlooks Michigan Avenue, and the Art Institute of Chicago that holds a multi-story rotunda. And for the best part of the story and the clear giveaway, this building, we are told, had its construction begin in May of 1904 and held its first concert that same exact year in December of 1904, over 120 years ago. All of this getting done in 7 months. That would be incredible if it was true. And we don't get the fire narrative here, but we do get an architect with the name Daniel Burnham. Really. It's just unbelievable. The amount of times that the narrative just throws something about burning or fires or destruction into these narratives. Burnham. Doesn't get any better than that. Well, besides the F.L. Ames character that we found in episode 50. Things that nobody noticed before, but they are very clear to us now, thankfully. Now, with a name like that attached to this kind of building, built in 7 months, 120 years ago, I think that qualifies for an investigation of Mr. Burnham, where he is pinned as a repeated failure. And I know I've seen this movie before, when they tell us that Abe Lincoln failed at everything and then became a hero. It has been used many, many times by the narrator. They pin this Burn guy as the creator of the tallest building in Chicago in 1881, the Montauk Building, where in 1881, forget about sleep, forget about freezing winters, get your horses to the site and get this building done. Built in a year, from 1882 to 1883. This thing is done. The tallest building in Chicago. And you know what they gotta do? They gotta knock it down in 1902. That is literally 19 years later. Is anybody on the fence at this point? Well, if you are, this is gonna help you get off the fence and over to our side. Let's have some fun. The guy with fire in his name, Burnham, went on to build more of the first American skyscrapers, such as the Masonic Temple Building in Chicago, measuring 21 stories, 302 feet. This character knocked this thing out from 1891 to 1892. This was simple stuff back then. And knocking it down in 1939. But they could knock that one down because they had a new location and opened that one up in 1926, supposedly. And this new one holds the deadliest theater fire and the deadliest single building fire in U.S. history. After this fire killed 600 people. So we get the fire and the destruction of lives, where they say that this doubled the death toll of the Chicago Great Fire, which is weird because according to the National Geographic Society, the Chicago Great Fire destroyed 17,500 buildings. Only 120 bodies were recovered and 300 people died, where we can all do the math and see that this does not add up for one building to hold more deaths than 17,500 buildings, and that there is a massive, massive lie just waiting for all of us to uncover it.